morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this first ever VeriTalks webinar. It's our pleasure to welcome you to this new initiative, which we are proud to launch as part of our ongoing efforts to strengthen communication and collaboration with all of you, our valued clients and partners. VeriTalks is more than just a webinar series. It's a dedicated communication platform that is created to bring us closer together and to share knowledge, exchange ideas, and help you stay ahead in an environment where regulations and requirements evolve continuously. Through VeriTalks, our goal is to turn complex compliance matters into open discussions, helping you gain clarity, confidence, and practical insight directly from our team of experts. Over time, you can expect different types of sessions under the VeriTalks umbrella. Our annual recap events, like what we are having today, where we reflect on the past verification period and we share the lessons learned, as well as technical deep dives and special editions, focus on specific topics under the FuelEU Maritime, EU ETS, IMO DCS, CII developments, and for other regional schemes that are coming up. For today's inaugural session, we have prepared a concise but comprehensive agenda. Let me proceed with this. Yes. So we will start with a recap of the 2025 verification period, highlighting key findings and common challenges. Then we will move to regulatory developments to see what's changing across EU, IMO, and the introduction of other regional carbon schemes. After that, we'll share recommendations to help you prepare for the 2026 verification cycle. And finally, we will open the floor for Q&A discussion. So I would like to invite you to type your questions during this session in the designated area of the Teams chat at any time. So we will collect all of your input and we will address as many as possible during the Q&A at the end of the session. In case any of the questions remains unanswered, please reach out to us after the webinar and we'll make sure that any other clarification that is required is fully answered. Once again, thank you for taking the time to join us today and for being part of this new step forward in how we communicate and collaborate. And yeah, we move on to the next parts. So we are having, first of all, a short recap of the 2025 verification period. It was a year that marked another important step forward in the implementation of both EU and IMO schemes with significant changes, as you all know, and as well as the gradual rollout of the FuelEU Maritime. Our verification activities this year covered all major regulatory frameworks, the EU MRV and ETS, the FuelEU Maritime, the UK MRV, the IMO DCS, CII, and SEMP, the Clean Shipping Index, and finally the ISO 14064 series projects. Altogether, our served fleet reached 462 vessels across all the schemes. And as you can see on this first slide, the EU schemes represented roughly 40% of our total effort, followed by the IMO frameworks, which is accounted for another 30%. The remaining 10% came from the other initiatives, such as the ISO verifications and the Clean Shipping Index. You see that these are smaller in number, but steadily growing every year for us. So this diversity reflects both the broadening scope of maritime environmental regulation and the trust we receive from you, our clients. And that continues to place in us as an accredited and authorized verification body in the front line of the industry. So moving on to the next agenda items, I want to draw your attention, first of all, on something very important, which is the monthly distribution of the completed verifications under the EU ETS regulation. These charts show first the pattern for vessel verifications and then for the company verifications, which is the following slide. What becomes immediately clear looking at this is that punctuality with deadlines is no longer optional. As many of you experienced during this first year of the EU ETS implementation, the reporting window is quite tight and is getting even more strict, as we will see from next year onwards. And the verification workload across the industry is immense. Almost half of our vessel verifications this year were completed after the deadline of the 31st of March, while the majority of the company verifications was finalized between the two milestones, between 31st of March and 30th of September. And these two are the critical cutoff dates defined by the regulation. One is for the completion of the verification, and the 30th of September is the final cutoff date, let's say, for the surrendering of the allowances. This delay pattern puts additional strain on both the verification process and on your internal teams, and it increases your risk of missing subsequent compliance steps, such as the surrendering of your allowances. So looking ahead, the next verification period will become even more demanding with the FuelEU Maritime regulation, adding another layer of reporting and verification requirements. Meeting the deadlines will be even more crucial, not only to remain compliant, but also to allow us the time needed to support you effectively and efficiently. So my message here is very simple. We can't help you if you come late. Early communication and timely data submission are the only way to ensure smooth verifications and to avoid unnecessary pressure at the end of the season. As you may know, several administering authorities require verification bodies to have an active account in their section of the Union Registry in order to approve the verified emissions of their assigned companies. To comply with these national requirements, we have established verifier accounts in various admin authorities such as Germany, Norway, Netherlands, Portugal, Malta, Italy, Greece, Cyprus, Bulgaria, and Estonia. It's important to mention that Estonia recently informed us that moving forward, they will no longer require verification bodies to perform this approval of the emissions within the Union Registry for their managed companies. Instead, they will handle the approval process internally, similar to the practice followed already by Spain and Belgium. Of course, then we have Romania, which continues to be somewhat of a wild card among the administering authorities. Just to remind everyone and inform the ones that have no relationship with Romania at the moment, Romania has not yet fully implemented into their national law the necessary provisions for the Union Registry's maritime section. As a result, the MOHAs under the Romanian part of the registry currently appear as non-compliant, even if the companies have met their obligations. The European Commission is fully aware of the situation, and we expect updates soon. Our understanding is that companies who have already opened their MOHAs under Romania, which was possible, and have surrendered their allowances on time should not face any major issues. However, companies that fail to complete their surrender obligations or they didn't even have a MOHA opened before the deadline of the 30th of September may encounter complications until Romania's framework is properly aligned. We will continue to monitor this closely and share any new developments with you as soon as they become available. So let's now go through some of the key outtakes from this verification cycle. A combination of informative updates, recurring challenges, and of course, examples of best practices that we believe are worth sharing. First, starting with some informative points, areas where we have seen progress and alignment across the industry. Through our participation in the EU ETS task force Maritime, which was formed by the administering authorities DG Klima and EMSA, and is currently led by Greece and Belgium. We have seen encouraging steps towards greater harmonization of procedures, particularly when it comes to the monitoring plan requirements. Many of you have seen the AAs returning back a lot of monitoring plans with extra requirements and requiring back and forth. So this is gradually getting better since these administering authorities are sitting together to harmonize their requirements. They are actually collaborating on a common structure and a documentation standard for the monitoring plans and the attachments that they require as supportive documents, such as the letter of mandate in case of the ISM takes over the responsibility from the ship owner. So this will make the whole process more consistent and more transparent. This is an important development and one that we fully support since it will help avoid unnecessary back and forth between the operators, the verifiers, and the authorities. Another important clarification that came out of the task force discussions is the zero emissions report practice. As mentioned earlier, for vessels or companies with no voyages under EU scope during a reporting year, submitting a zero emission report in both TEDIS and URMOHA remains still a strong recommendation. This will ensure that your administrative authority can properly document and support your exclusion from the EUA surrendering obligations for that specific year, avoiding any additional confusion or any compliance risk on your side. Now, on the other hand, we have a few problematic matters that continue to create delays or compliance risks, and which we all need to focus on improving. First of all, changes in vessel management or ownership continue to be a source of difficulty. So whenever a vessel changes hands during the year, it's essential that the outgoing company has finalized its reporting and verification in TEDIS before the transfer of the vessel is made, with all that this entails. And just to explain further, we're talking also about the verification of the emissions and the proper transfer of the vessel through the TEDIS platform. Imagine having a transfer that occurred during the last year at some point, and you still don't have access to that vessel on TEDIS. This not only affects your vessel verification, but it affects your company verification and the overall compliance, including the proper surrendering of the EUAs, which will lead to penalties. So, very important point. Also remember that under EU ETS, the ship owner remains the responsible entity unless a letter of mandate has been signed with the ISM company transferring that responsibility to the manager. And the responsible party must match the one declared on both the TEDIS platform and your MOHA accounts. This is another thing that we noticed, that although the monitoring plan on TEDIS was showing another company, maybe that was the ship owner, then the manager opened the MOHA and it was not possible to ensure full compliance and surrender the allowances under the proper company's account. Another issue relating to that is the lack of administering authority attribution or the absence of a MOHA. Companies that still are without an assigned AA should contact EMSA via the Fit for 55 support channel immediately while those without a MOHA must act quickly to open one. Failure to do so will result in no compliance and eventually restrictions on EU port access, plus, of course, the penalties. Then, of course, there's the issue of the late submissions and incomplete or inconsistent data sets. We still see cases where data are reported after deadlines or where key information is missing or is incorrect, forcing unnecessary rework. This not only delays verification, but also puts operators at risk of missing their compliance deadlines for EUA surrender. Timelines and data completeness, of course, are essential, and this is where good planning makes all the difference. Finally, I want to mention our familiarity with the regulations as another recurring issue we notice. We understand these rules are complex and evolving, but operators should make active use of the official guidance resources provided by the European Commission. The Commission has published a comprehensive set of frequently asked questions and guidance documents for all their schemes, the EUMRV, the ETS, and the FuelEU. This is what we check whenever we receive a question from you. So it will make our life easier and your life much more easier if you read this through, keep them close, bookmark them in your web browsers to keep them close to you, and refer to them anytime you have questions. Of course, we are here to help to answer any additional question you have, but if you are missing basic information, then we spend a lot of time without any actual purpose. And to finish this section on a positive note, let's look at some best practices we observed this year. A number of our clients have started integrating their EU ETS compliance responsibilities into their charter party agreements, which is an excellent approach, in my opinion. This means that the emissions-related costs is defined contractually between the owner and the charterer, irrespective of the type of charter, even if it's a single voyage charter or if it's a time charter, it doesn't matter. As long as this is included in your CPs, it helps you because the company will report, you will report basically your fuel consumption and emissions per voyage or per period, depending on the charter type. And then the charterer will usually request that we verify those figures before they accept it. And this verified data serves as the basis for compensation for you during the year and allows you to acquire your EU allowances progressively throughout the year. Remember, it doesn't mean that you have to wait until September next year to acquire EU allowances. You can still purchase allowances at any time you want in packages, 1 by 1, 10 by 10, 100 by 100, it doesn't matter. And if you take advantage of this contractual agreement with your charterers, it means that you can acquire the allowances during the year and you can take advantage of the market price fluctuations of the CO2 price. So you can also save money from there if you play it smart. So this is a very effective strategy for both transparency and, of course, most importantly, cost control. Another good practice we have seen is early engagement and data readiness. Clients who submit their information ahead of deadlines maintain clear internal data trails and communicate promptly and experience smoother verifications and fewer non-conformities. The same applies for companies that come to us during the year for a voyage by voyage or periodic partial, let's say, verifications. Because this at the end, in January every year, let's say, it's very easy for us to just review whatever we have already verified during the year and just give our final acceptance on that. So in short, my message here is that early actions lead to easier compliance. And to summarize this section, this first part of our presentation, use official guidance and stay familiar with the regulations. Act early and provide your complete data. Ensure vessel transfers are properly managed and look for practical solutions. With these steps, you can truly make a difference in turning compliance from a burden into a manageable and predictable process. So now let's move to a set of important regulatory updates for the coming verification cycle. These points are essential for planning your compliance strategy for 2025 and 2026. So I'd like to go through them carefully, and I would like to invite Yannis to present this section. Hello, everybody.
Hello everybody, hope everything's good. So I'm Yannis Kitromilidis, I'm a greenhouse gases emissions verifier for those who doesn't know. And today we are going to speak regarding the regulatory updated for 2025 and 2026 verification period. So, as per the EU ETS regulation, the administering authorities, together with the European Commission, will publish the names of the companies that failed to surrender their allowances by 30 September deadline for the 2024 reporting period. At this moment, there are no additional official updates for the Commission on how non-compliant companies will be treated beyond what the regulation already stipulates. So we can only refer to the regulatory text itself. The rules are very clear, guys. These companies still need to surrender the outstanding allowances, and they must pay the penalty of 100 euros per tons of CO2 equivalent not surrendered on time. This penalty does not replace the surrender obligation, so both requirements apply cumulatively. If your company is affected, it is critical to prompt once the notification is issued. So, the change in phase-in derogation. For 2025, the phase-in derogation, as you already know, increases from 40% to 70% of verified emission. This means that companies will notice a significant increase in the quantity of the EUAs required for surrender the 2025 period. It is essential that you begin planning early. Surrender obligations will continue tightening in the coming years, so this year-over-year increase should not come as a surprise, but rather as something to budget for and incorporate into your chartering and commercial strategies. Earlier emissions report submission deadline and how impact of FuelEU Maritime. Another very important update is that the EU MRV emissions report submission timeline is now directly affected by the requirements of FuelEU Maritime regulation. Under FuelEU, companies must submit the ship's FuelEU report to the verifier by 31st of January, because both regulations rely on the same underlying dataset. This effectively moves up to the submission deadlines of EU MRV and ETS as well. In other words, you will need to provide your complete 2025 data by the end of January. If these data are submitted later or incomplete, you risk falling into non-compliance under FuelEU and making it impossible for us to complete your ETS and MRV verification at the time. This is one of the most important changes going on into next year. Furthermore, for the verification of activities planning, which is very crucial for you, is under the EU ETS regulations. All the verification bodies are required to submit their verification engagement plan for the upcoming year to the national accreditation body by 15th of November. This information is then relayed to the European Commission and the administrative authorities. This requirement is not just a formality, it's also a planning tool that helps us organize our workload and allocate resources effectively so that we can meet your deadlines. To do this properly, we will be arranging one-on-one meeting with all of you in the coming days. During these meetings, we will confirm which vessels you expect to verify in 2026 and whether a company-level verification will be also required. Your early confirmation is very essential, and it allows us to plan our capacity for the year and ensure that all verifications are carried out within the regulatory timeframes. And let's proceed to the next slide. So let's now move on to the FuelEU Maritime regulation, which becomes fully operational with strict interlinked deadlines starting this year. This slide highlights the 4 key areas you need to be aware of for a smooth and compliant implementation. First of all, the deadlines. So FuelEU introduces a tighter and more demanding timeline that from what we are used to for the EU MRV regulation. The critical dates are 31st of January, submission of FuelEU report for verification. 31st of March, complete verification of both FuelEU report and compliance balance. 30th of April, declare the flexibility mechanism you intend to use if it's applicable. And 30th of June, pay any compliance deficit, which is a penalty, to receive your DOC. A crucial point here is the issuance of the DOC, the documents of compliance. This document will only be issued if the ship's compliance balance is positive or neutral, or that the deficit has been covered through one of the approved flexibility mechanisms. In these cases, we will issue the DOC as part of the verification process. If the ship has a deficit and does not make use of any flexibility mechanism, then the operator must pay the penalty in deficit directly to the administering state. In such cases, the administering state, not the verifier, will issue the DOC. In other words, AES will issue the DOC with these cases. Keep in mind that failure to obtain a DOC is considered a detainable deficiency, and it may lead to poor state control intervention, so timely compliance is essential. Let's move forward to the reported information needed for the FuelEU. So the FuelEU uses the same underlying dataset as EU MRV and ETS as long as conventional fossil fuels are used. However, there are important additions. If you use renewable, low carbon, or sustainable fuels, you will need to report additional supporting information. The same applies if you use any onboard energy reducing technologies, such as wind assist propulsion or shared side power. And the key operational point here is on the per voyage information that must be uploaded into this MRV platform. This is the biggest workload difference. It requires continuous input, not a last-minute upload in January. Uploading every voyage for every ship takes time, and the January deadline does not leave room for delays. So the message here is very clear. Start early, upload continuously, and avoid the January bottleneck. So now regarding the compliance balance, the core of the FuelEU compliance is actually the compliance balance, which compares the ship's actual greenhouse gas intensity with the required target greenhouse gas intensity for the reporting period. A few key outcomes follow from this comparison. Positive balance, which means surplus, the actual greenhouse intensity is better than the target set. A surplus is generated, and this can be banked for future periods. Negative balance deficit is that the actual greenhouse gas intensity is worse than the target, and then a deficit is created. What happens if you have a deficit? You must take some corrective actions, which may include covering the deficit through a flexibility mechanism or paying the FuelEU penalty. If the deficit is covered properly, the DOC can be issued by us, the verifiers. However, if not, the penalty must be paid directly to the administering state before they issue the DOC. So, proceeding next for the flexibility mechanism. So FuelEU, allow us several mechanisms to give operators flexibility on how they achieve compliance. First of all is embanking. What is the banking? You can carry forward surplus compliance from 1 year to another. So if you have a surplus for the reporting period 25, you can save it for 2026 in any case. Borrowing. You can borrow a portion of next year's surplus within strict limits, typically capped at 2% of the required greenhouse gas intensity improvement for 2 consecutive years and subject to a penalty multiplier. Pooling. Companies may group vessels together and exchange compliance balances to offset surpluses and deficits across the pool. And finally, the penalty payment. If none of the above mechanisms are used or sufficient, the operator must pay the FuelEU penalty set at 2,400 per ton of VLSFO equivalent for the excess emissions. These mechanisms give operators flexibility, but they also require early planning, data preparedness, and internal decision making, especially because your DOC depends on final compliance position. So that's all from my side. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Yanni, for your insights on the EU regulatory developments. So to wrap up this section on FuelEU Maritime, the key takeaways is that we are moving into a period where timing, planning, and data discipline are absolutely critical. Strict deadlines per voyage reporting on CEDIs, very important, and the introduction of the compliance balance mean that the operators must stay organized throughout the year, not only during verification time. Flexibility mechanisms exist, but they only work if the underlying data are complete and submitted early. And as we've emphasized, the DOC issuance depends entirely on these steps being completed correctly and on time. With that in mind, let's now move to another major part of the regulatory landscape, the IMO developments. The coming changes under IMO, including updates to CII and the next steps for SEM Part 2, will also have a direct impact on how you monitor and manage your environmental performance going forward. And to guide us through the upcoming IMO topics, as well as a brief overview of some other regional carbon schemes, I will hand over to Marios, who will walk you through the key developments and what to expect for the next reporting cycle. Mario?
Thank you, Marino and Yanni, for your presentation. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar. So let's now look at a few key developments from the IMO side, starting with the required updates to SEM Part 2. So as you already may know, all ships over 5,000 GT are required to have an updated SEM Part 2 approved and placed on board no later than 31st December 2025. And this is a hard deadline that we all have to cope with it. From 1st January 2026, all fuel oil consumption data will have to be recorded and reported in accordance with the updated SEM Part 2, meaning that the new structure becomes fully operational from the very first day of the year. This means companies need to start preparing well in advance, reviewing their existing SEM, identifying gaps, and coordinating with their verifier to ensure timely approval. So what has changed? The revised SEM Part 2 introduces several important changes aimed at improving traceability, consistency, and alignment with IMO's monitoring framework. The main changes include a detailed table outlining the procedure for calculating and recording the vessel's total transport work for each laden voyage, presenting a table describing the procedure for documenting onshore power supply usage known as OPS, covering both current and potential future application to ensure transparent reporting of energy consumption while at berth. specifying the measurement method for each individual engine or fuel consumer, meaning the plan must show exactly how each burn point is quantified. And finally, recording consumption per engine or consumer, where have a split between underway and not underway operations. So the updated SEMP is more detailed and more transparent. It requires companies to think carefully about their measurement methods and ensure that all equipment, tanks, meters, and procedures are clearly documented. Lastly, a brief update on the IMO's progress toward the net zero framework, which is the next major regulatory package after CII. The proposal introduces a greenhouse gas fuel intensity metric, similar in concept to the EU's approach, with the aim of steadily reducing the life cycle greenhouse gas intensity of fuels used in international shipping. Implementation of this framework has been postponed by 1 year because member states were not able to reach consensus during the last MEPC session. And despite the postponement, discussions are ongoing and the framework is moving forward. The net zero framework is expected to become a central pillar of IMO's decarbonization strategy in the years ahead. Before we move on, I would like to briefly highlight developments in two additional regional carbon schemes that will also influence the compliance landscape over the next few years. First, the UK MRV framework will be expanded into a full emissions trading scheme known as the ETS, with implementation currently planned for July 2026. The UK authorities are still finalizing many of the operational details, including scope, monitoring requirements, and alignment with the existing EU MRV and ETS systems. We are of course following these discussions closely and will update you as soon as more clarity is available. Secondly, Turkey is in the process of developing its own national ETS, which is expected to include maritime emissions in the coming years. The legislative process is still ongoing and no final timelines have been announced yet. Nonetheless, we are actively monitoring the situation and we will keep you informed as soon as concrete steps are published. These regional developments show that carbon pricing and greenhouse gas regulation are expanding globally, and we will continue to ensure that you stay updated and prepared for what comes next. That covers everything from my side. Marino, I think the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marie, for an insightful presentation. So as we approach the end of today's session, I would like to leave you with two key points on how we can all prepare more effectively for the next verification period. The first point is, of course, planning. We mentioned it already. To ensure a smooth and timely verification cycle next year, we will be arranging individual meetings with each of you in the coming weeks. These meetings will allow us to, first of all, confirm the full scope of work you will require from us, whether that includes the IMO DCS CII, EU MRV, FuelEU, UK MRV, or even the upcoming UK ETS. Secondly, confirm your EU MRV and ETS fleets per MOHA account, so we know exactly which ships fall under each administering authority and which company verifications we will be asked to complete. Third, plan any necessary monitoring plan assessments or SEMP approvals that could impact your verification deadlines, and ideally, any affected monitoring plans or SEMPs should be completed before the end of this year and not having to go through them during the verification period adding extra workload on everyone. And finally, we have to agree on the required service agreements well in advance. This will allow you also to budget these services accordingly and to pre-agree what is going to be expected for next year. This early planning ensures that both sides are aligned and our scheduling is realistic and that there is no surprises during the very busy verification period. I forgot one step, which is the deadline. Next year, with the combined requirements of all these regulations, the EU MRV, UTS, FuelEU, and of course the ongoing IMO obligations, our timelines will be even tighter. For this reason, I want to highlight the following very clearly. Verification jobs submitted after the designated deadline will be handled, unfortunately, at lower priority, and we cannot guarantee on-time completion. This is a strategy that has been already implemented by all other verifiers, bigger or smaller. This is not something new. And this is not to make things more difficult for you. It's simply a practical necessity. Late submissions, as you understand, create bottlenecks. They reduce the time available for a proper review and jeopardize your compliance position. My message for this is to respect the deadlines, start early, engage early, and keep the communication with your verifiers clear. If we plan together and keep to the timelines, next verification cycle will be much smoother for all of us. I'd like to thank you all for your attention and for joining us in this first VeriTalks session. We hope today's insights help you prepare more confidently for the upcoming compliance cycle and give you a clearer picture of what to expect in 2026. At this point, I would like to open the floor for your questions. If you have not done so already, please feel free to type your questions in the designated Q&A section, and we'll start addressing them right away. We have one question from Captain Fares. What is the actions that could be taken against vessels which their companies don't have MOHA account yet? To answer this more clearly is that we can only refer to what the regulation says, because we asked this question directly in our last meeting with the administering authorities that was in end of June. They also referred back to the regulation. They are not fully agreed on how they will implement this, but the regulation is clear. First of all, there will be a penalty for the company, not for the vessel. The accountable company for each vessel under the EU ETS and MRV schemes will have to pay the required penalty. This means that the MOHA company, and the company is actually mentioned, first of all, on the monitoring plan of the vessel, which is also the MOHA company, will have to pay a penalty which is at 100 euros per ton of CO2 equivalent. Plus, that company will still need to fully submit their allowances, which means additional cost. If today's price, for example, is around 76, 78 euros per ton CO2 equivalent, this means that the total amount that you still have to pay even today, which is 1 month exactly after the past deadline, you will pay 176, 178 euros per ton of CO2 emitted by that specific company. Now, what will happen on the vessel level as well. There is a chance, although this is not 100% sure if this will be applied from the first year or from a consecutive non-compliance year. Any vessel that is associated with a non-compliant company, even that company might be the ship owner or the ship manager of a specific vessel, that vessel will be banned from entering EU ports. And in case it arrives in EU ports, you know from previous experience how this is usually handled. The vessels can be detained and arrested until all the obligations are fully met by the responsible company. And lifting of such bans is not clarified at the moment. According to the regulation, there is no possibility of lifting the ban. So this, as you understand, creates additional troubles for non-compliant companies. So you have to make sure that you have a MOHA, you report on time, surrender the allowances on time. And what we discussed today and with many of you in private discussions as well during the past period, the best example is to put these requirements in your charter party agreements, collect the money from the charterers during the reporting period, and take advantage of the market price of the CO2, because the price, as you can see, it fluctuates. One day it can be 60 euros, the other day can be 80 euros. So if you have the money in your pockets and you can purchase the allowances at a specific time, do so, and this will save you also money at the end of each period. So I hope this is answered. And let me see if we have any other question. We have one question from Fatima. I want to understand more about the point of the difference between the management and the owner regarding the MOHA account. So a simple answer to that is that what the regulation states. The regulation, first of all, we're talking about the EU MRV and ETS regulations. So the responsibility for a MOHA account, because the MOHA account is a commercial account in the Union Registry system. So the responsible company, according to this regulation, which is different from the FuelEU, as I will mention afterwards, is that the responsibility goes on the ship owner, unless the ship owner transfers this responsibility to the ship manager, the ISM, the DOC holder, with a letter of mandate. So the letter of mandate is a templated document that states that me as the ship owner, for example, I'm transferring the EU ETS and MRV responsibilities on my vessel's manager, the DOC holder. Both companies sign this document, and this document is made available to the verifier as part of the monitoring plan assessment, and is also uploaded on attendees so that the monitoring plan is fully approved by the administering authority. So the company who takes responsibility, even if it's the ship owner or if it's the ship manager after such a letter of mandate is signed, has to be mentioned on the first page of your monitoring plan for each vessel. So the company that is mentioned there is the company that has to open a MOHA account, because apart from the reporting and verification of the data, that company has to report at a company level their emissions. So for all the vessels that that company took responsibility under that regulation, they have to do their verification. And then based on the final amount of emissions they verified through their verification body, they have to report it through their MOHA on the Union Registry system. And then once these amounts are also approved either by a verifier or by the administering authority directly, depending on what country we are referring to, the company can then surrender and shall surrender actually the full amount of emissions based on what they have already purchased from the market during the year. So I think this covers the first part of the question, and let me go to the second part. So if we assign the management as the responsible entity, I guess in ETS account, it should be the same company that opens the MOH account. Yes, this is exactly correct, and this is what I described earlier. We have one more question from Nagam. I need to know more regarding FuelEU report. Is it based on same MRV emission report Excel form, or is there any different form to be filled and completed?
There's a question before that about the FuelEU part in the Q&A column.
Okay, it's okay. I will go through this from here, and I will make sure to answer all of them. So yes and no. So depends on what kind of fuels you are using. So if you used the same fuels that you used last year, which were from our experience, most of our clients, apart from a roughly 5 to 6% of our fleet, used conventional fossil fuels. This means that you don't have to report anything additional. Unless you traveled in ice conditions, or if you visited any outermost regions of the EU, which allow some discounts, these derogations that the regulation mentions. We will come back to you with this towards the end of the year on how we want to collect this information, because we are also developing our internal verification tool and digital platform that will allow us to carry out the verifications going forward. But and this is for everyone, not only for Nagam. As we said, there are webinars also from the EU Commission that guide you through the steps that you need to follow to submit these reports on Thetis MRV. So we will not ask you for anything further than what you have to add on Thetis MRV. So if you log into your accounts right now and try to start reporting on a voyage by voyage basis, because this is the requirement of the FuelEU regulation, we cannot avoid that, then you will see what kind of information is required there. So whatever is there, it covers what we will also need as part of the verification. So next question by Joe. In case of non-compliance in FuelEU requirement, the DOC will be issued by the AA or RO. Yeah, good question. So first of all, to clarify, AAs, we are talking about the administering authorities that are under the EU MRV and ETS regulation. Although we're talking about the same EU member states, for example, Cyprus, when we refer to the AA, it means that it's the responsible entity under the Cyprus government that takes care of the ETS regulation. When we talk about the FuelEU regulation, we are talking about the administering state. This is a different terminology, so we don't confuse each entity. And for Cyprus, for example, the AA is the Ministry of Environment, and the AES, the administering state, is the Deputy Ministry of Shipping. So we're talking about two different parts of each government. So usually for the FuelEU, it's going to be people who understand about shipping. And as you already saw, where you experienced with your MOHA opening and the reporting of the monitoring plans, the AAs are usually people who have background on other carbon schemes, like the aviation scheme in the ETS in aviation and in the stationary units as well. So going back to the DOC part, in case of non-compliance, which means that you have a deficit of your compliance balance, then you will have to pay a penalty that it's calculated based on the amount of the deficit. So you take the amount of deficit times 2,400 euros per VLSFO equivalent, and this has to be paid to each administering state. And then the administering state will issue the DOC once they confirm the transfer of the penalty with each company. And another comment on that is that for the FuelEU, the companies who are responsible are always the ISM company. There is no chance to change that. It's always the ISM company. They cannot transfer the responsibility back to the ship owner. This is what the regulation states. So for one vessel, just to give you an example, for one vessel that the responsible company that is shown on the MRV monitoring plan is the ship owner, and this means that the ship owner will open a MOHA and will take charge of all the compliance stuff for the MRV and ETS. This means that for the FuelEU, the ISM will have been mentioned on the monitoring plan of the FuelEU, and they will have to take care of the compliance requirements under the FuelEU. And in that case, that might mean that for the same vessel, you are dealing with two different countries. One that is the AA related to the ship owner, that might be in Greece, for example, and then the ISM company might be registered in Cyprus. So for the same vessel, you will be dealing with two different countries. This is a realistic scenario. As frustrating as it might sound, this is the reality. And there's nothing you can do, unfortunately, about that. This is the regulation. And also a second question from Joe relating to that, how the payment will be done. So because each ISM company will be dealing directly with their administering state, each administering state, they will publish by the end of the year, or maybe the maximum deadline they have is until the deadline next year, which is the time they have to start issuing the DOCs and collecting the money. So we are expecting that. It's still not sure, but each country, they will publish their own ways of collecting the money. So you don't have to open a MOHA to comply with the FuelEU, because we are talking about a completely different regulation that is handled by a different part of each government. And it's not mandated under the same umbrella that we have for the ETS, which in this case is the Union Registry. So we have the Union Registry as a central pillar, but this is only for the ETS, it's not for the FuelEU. So you will be dealing directly with each country, with each administering state. Can the owner make a mandate to other company other than the manager's or owner's company? No, this is not possible, unfortunately. Officially through the system and what the EU regulation is requiring. So if you want to transfer the responsibility on the charterer, for example, or to a bank or to anyone else, you can do that outside the regulation, for any regulation, either for the FuelEU or for the ETS. But still, this doesn't remove the responsibility from the company who is declared on the monitoring plan. So you cannot declare anyone else other than the ship owner or the ship manager officially on the system. The only thing you can do is either take the responsibility of the ship manager or transfer this to your ISM company. Outside the system, if you agree with your charterer that he will pay you the required amounts, so you collect it and report it through your account in the Union Registry, this is doable. But the responsible entity is either the ship owner or the manager, if the manager has taken such responsibility through the mandate. Next question from Fatima about the FuelEU part. How to know if I'm lower than the actual targeted greenhouse gas intensity, and if I am in the safe side, do we need to have a flexibility mechanism or no? So Basically, if you haven't used any sustainable fuel so far, or if you haven't installed any energy reducing device which is approved under the FuelEU regulation, this means that you are already in greenhouse gas intensity in deficit. So this means that you have to either pay the corresponding penalty, or the easiest thing that I would suggest you to do is to find a pool with companies that have invested in new technologies or new fuels, and they have generated a sufficient amount of surplus, and they can sell you this amount of surplus that you need to cover your deficit in a price that you will agree with them. So instead of paying 2,400 euros per VLSFO equivalent, which is the regulator value, maybe you can agree on a 1,000 VLSFO euros per VLSFO equivalent with an individual pool owner. Yes, one from Costas. The DOC from the AA after payment of the FuelEU penalty will be issued for the company or for each ship separately. So the DOC is still issued per vessel, the same as for the MRV. So the difference here between the commercial difference, one of the commercial differences between the two regulations is that for the ATS, you have to aggregate all the data of your fleet, and you have to pay as a company to comply for all the vessels under your fleet. For the FuelEU, the responsible company, which is the ISM company, as we mentioned previously, has to pay individually for each vessel. So I think this is clear. And another question from Haidar Shipping. We can start making the verification for 2025. Yes, if you want to submit for a specific period your data and review those data, yes, we can do that. This will give you an actual indication on where you stand on both regulations. But officially, we cannot issue, DOCs or any official documents, because we have to wait until the full year is completed and re-verify all the data. This is something that we can discuss with each of you during our one-on-one meetings that we will arrange in the couple of next weeks. And also we'll have to pay for both MRV and FuelEU. Yes, this is what I mentioned previously. Each company will have to pay once for all of their vessels that they manage under the MRV and ETS regulation, and separately for each vessel that falls under FuelEU. I think we have another one from Captain Mohammed. Are the charterers authorized to remit the allowance per voyage basis directly to any MOHA account? It's not a matter of authorization. It's a matter of what each company agreed with their charter. So our clients that they enforced this, they added specific clauses in their charter party agreements. There are some standard clauses. You can find them in BIMCO, for example, regarding this. If you have any uncertainty on that, of course, give me a call afterwards, and I can guide you to find these reference documents. So once you put them in your charter party agreements, this means that usually, depending on the exact arrangement you'll make with your charterer, usually it's either on a voyage by voyage basis. You collect the data, you come to us for a pre-verification and confirmation, basically, of the consumptions and the corresponding emissions. And based on those figures, you send the report that we will prepare to the charterer, and the charterer will remit those amounts, not the allowances though, because the charterer is not involved with allowances. And when I'm talking about allowances, I mean the purchased EUAs, the CO2. They will give you the money either in US dollars or in euros. This is the transaction you usually make with your charterers. The EUAs, only the MOH account can convert the euros into EUAs, or any broker in the system who will make the purchase for them and transfer this amount of money. Because when we are talking about transactions in the Union Registry, we're talking about CO2 allowances, the EUAs. When we're talking about transactions outside the system between companies and charterers, we're talking about like US dollars or euros, depending on how you transact already with your charterers for your other commercial arrangements. So I don't see any other questions so far. Still, we're looking for any other feedback from you. Reach out to us, and we will make sure we clarify any other question that you may have. We will revert in the next few days with a recording of today's session in case you want to go back and refresh on your memories on specific topics. We will also share the presentation material with you. And please expect an invitation from us for a one-to-one meeting. For that meeting, it's very important, and this is something that we'll communicate with you in the invitation email, of course. We will send you the list of vessels under your responsibility based on our previous, engagements. Please confirm that this is the accurate list. Let us know if any vessel is not under your responsibility, or if it was sold or changed management or ship owners during the year, because you still have to do, the partial verification for your side of the responsibility. And also we need you to confirm what services you expect from us for each company and each vessel for next year. This will allow us to prepare the agreements, the pricing as well that we will agree with you. And this will allow us to plan well ahead and provide the necessary resources. Thank you very much for your time today, and we look forward for future VeriTalks meetings. Have a good rest of the day.